Angry Birds released in 2009 and took the world by storm. With over 30 games, 2 movies, countless merchandise, a theme park, and so much more, the series has clearly seen some success. But is every individual game as great as the original? With the newly re-released classic game back on the App Store, let's look back at all the other Angry Birds games and get excited for future releases of the series. Before we get started, just a few things to note. First, I always play Angry Birds games trying to get 3 stars in every level, so I judge games based on that experience pretty heavily. I also have played a lot of the early ones and not a lot of the newer ones. I'm going in order of when they're released, so it almost acts like a history of the series as well. Finally, this is my own opinion, but I'd love to hear your rankings in the comments as well. Since it was fun naming all the Papa's games in order of their release, I'm going to do it for Angry Birds here. And yes, I'm going to repeat Angry Birds in every title. Okay, here we go. Angry Birds Seasons, Angry Birds Rio, Angry Birds Friends, Angry Birds Space, Angry Birds Star Wars 2, Angry Birds Go, Angry Birds Epic, Angry Birds Transformers, Angry Birds Pop, Angry Birds Fight, Angry Birds 2, Angry Birds Action, Angry Birds Blast, Angry Birds Evolution, Angry Birds Match, Angry Birds Dream Blast, Angry Birds Reloaded, and finally Rovio Classics Angry Birds. I did that at one breath, oh my gosh. I'm also going to include Bad Piggies, Angry Birds Stella, and Angry Birds Journey on the list. I haven't played the VR games and there are a bunch that never officially released that I won't cover either. Without further ado, let's start the ranking. First up, we have the original game. It's a lot of fun, of course. I even enjoy replaying a lot of the levels, which I can't say for most of the other games. While some Angry Birds games have some really good levels or worlds and some that aren't as great, the original has a great mix of amazing levels all the way through. I cannot keep myself from putting it in S tier. If you liked the original and wanted more levels, Angry Birds Seasons was the perfect game for you. Not only did it bring new themes and was updated seasonally, but it also had a lot of really fun levels. As time went on, it got a bit repetitive, and I don't really enjoy playing the 5th Christmas-themed world anymore. Still, it's really just more of the original, so I'll put it at A tier. Pretty close to S tier, just not quite. I don't know if a single other human being holds this opinion, but Rio is my favorite Angry Birds game. I love plenty of the others, don't worry. But there's something about this one. It might just be nostalgia as well. I played it a lot as a kid, and recently I re-downloaded all the old Angry Birds games I had, and I 100%ed it like it was nothing and enjoyed every second of it. There are some really cool boss fights, an overarching story, and even an updated visual look for the levels based on the second movie. The new birds aren't anything special, but nothing could keep me from putting this at the top of my rankings. Angry Birds Friends is a weird one. I can't remember if it started as a Facebook game or not, but the idea was that they'd update the game with new levels for a tournament, and you try to beat your friends and other players' scores. It's still updated to this day actually, which is cool I guess. I prefer just 3-star levels though, so I never really got into this one. I'll put it in C tier, just nothing special for me. I used to watch the cinematic trailer for Angry Birds Space over and over. I love the concept of it so much. It also created an entirely new gameplay mechanic for the series, with gravity, as well as a bunch of minor ones like water physics. I always found the levels to be really challenging, especially to 3-star. It does make the game a bit frustrating, honestly. However, they really had a lot of variety for a space-themed game, and it's really cool to go through every world and see the evolution of it. It's really cool, and the updated bird powers are awesome. A tier. The first spin-off title, Bad Piggies, focused on the pigs using vehicles and contraptions to get the birds' eggs. It was awesome for the time, and it's awesome now. The music is also so unbelievably catchy. I don't think I've seen a mobile game that is anything like Bad Piggies. It's as unique as the original Angry Birds was. If you've never played it, I seriously encourage you to. S tier, it just has to be. Rovio took the mechanics from Space and slapped a coat of Star Wars paint on top of it. A little backstory here. I loved playing Angry Birds as a kid and had never watched Star Wars before. Playing this game got me to watch all 6 of them at the time and made me a fan of the series. This has got to be the biggest crossover Angry Birds had ever had, and it released on some consoles too. You get to play through the story of the movies, but in a more cartoony way, kind of like Lego Star Wars. I really like it, my nostalgia is pretty much forcing me to put it in S tier. The original Star Wars must have been a pretty big success because they made a sequel just 1 year later. This one covers the prequels with all new characters that were really the main focus of the game. This also saw the introduction of telepods, which was Rovio's version of something like Skylanders. You could buy toys and scan them in to get birds in the game. They acted like a power-up where you could use them to any level you wanted. It had a currency too, which is weird, but I like this one, just not as much as the original. Plus, I hate the prequels. B tier. While I do really like Angry Birds Go, it was unfortunately the start of the games that had nothing to do with the slingshot mechanic. I think it's nice to stray from that, but they hardly return to it for quite some time. Anyways, this is a racing game based on upgrading your vehicles and unlocking characters. It's genuinely a fun racing game, although it has its flaws. It gets a bit pay-to-win-ish as you get farther along. Like I said though, really fun. A tier. While combining Angry Birds and an RPG might not make the most sense, Angry Birds Epic was genuinely epic. For people who don't enjoy RPGs, this game is welcoming to them. It had a fantasy theme too, which is something we haven't seen since. Upgrading characters and weapons and armor was always cool, but always pretty heavily relied on in-app purchases. Although I've been singing its praises here, I've never really got into it. I just think it's cool for what it is. B tier. Angry Birds Stella was treated like it was its own series for some reason, like it's a spin-off, I guess. Yet it has the original slingshot mechanic and brand new birds. I think it was meant to be targeted for like a female demographic or something. I always felt like Angry Birds was neutral, but whatever. It even had its own TV show. I was really excited for this game when it came out. I restarted all the levels and I played it every day, and then it just never got updated. I was so sad. I liked the game, the new birds and their powers, everything. Because of this, I guess I'll have to give it A tier. I wanted to love it, but it never did well. I still don't really know what happened. When Rio and Star Wars released, I was actually interested in the source material, but I never cared about Transformers, so the crossover aspect of this one never landed for me. It was also very niche in its gameplay mechanic, where your character runs and you shoot at pigs in the background. I don't have a lot to say, I never liked it, and it seems pretty boring to play for a long time. C tier. This is the time that people began noticing the decline of Angry Birds game. It's pretty obvious from the gameplay alone what Angry Birds Pop was. I do actually like the graphics, and it was a style of game that makes sense for Angry Birds to tackle. It had potential. I didn't play it, but I don't think it's egregious or anything. C tier. You might have noticed I've kind of been saving these lower tiers for the remaining games, which Fight is easily going to fit into. It's just kind of uninspired. Even though I play Disney Emoji Blitz on my channel, I've never really enjoyed these timed match 3 games. I prefer like actual match 3 puzzles. Playing against other players is cool, I guess. The animations were pretty bad though. D tier. The long-awaited sequel released 6 years after the original. The main question was, really, is there something that constitutes an actual sequel? And while many may disagree, I think it does. Angry Birds 2 has sort of an endless amount of levels, where you play multiple stages that make up a singular level. It's got a ton of features, some cool cosmetics, new characters, and a few different modes too. Like I said, it's pretty much an endless game. I think the levels are even like procedurally made. I really like it. I want to play it again, honestly. A tier. Angry Birds Action was the start of using the new anthropomorphic designs from the movies in their games, which I think most fans agree was the real beginning of the end for the series. Not only do I just prefer the style of the original games, but these games just coincidentally were really bad. I also had a grudge on them because they changed the art of the old games to have the movie designs too. Anyways, this game is kind of hard to describe. You launch the birds at the pigs, and they bounce around like it's a pinball machine or something. The levels are boring and have the same background all the way through, and there's like 4 playable birds. Low D tier, basically F tier. Thankfully, this one was in the style of the original games. Kind of going back to that. Angry Birds Blast was the match 3 puzzle game I was just asking for earlier, and I did play it for a bit. It just didn't really have anything to offer outside of the puzzle, so there wasn't really anything else to do. It just kind of lacked a little bit more to make it interesting enough for me to care. C tier. Angry Birds Evolution is without a doubt the weirdest Angry Birds game, which in a way kind of makes it the most interesting one. I can't wait to describe it to you. It has the exact same gameplay of Angry Birds Action, but with like 300 different birds this time. There are a bunch of mobile games where breeding is a thing for some reason, and funny enough, it kind of makes sense for this in the Angry Birds game to have breeding, since you are making eggs to try to get new or rare birds. So clearly very heavy on in-app purchases. I think this one is so different in terms of its style that I end up just kind of liking it. There are so many new characters introduced here, which is kind of a fun world building too. Surprisingly, I'm putting it in B tier. Yet another match 3 game, but with the Angry Birds movie style and the baby birds that are trying to be the minions from Despicable Me. Really bland. Me, 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 me. Me, me, me. Oh, sorry. Lowest D tier. Have you ever heard of the Disney Tsum Tsum game? Angry Birds Dream Blast is that. It's hard to explain, it's like a match 3 game with gravity. I guess the gameplay speaks for itself. The style also is just Angry Birds but baby for some reason. Like, why? It's so unnecessary. Whatever. Whenever I played it, it made me Dream Blast. As in, I fell asleep instantly. D tier. When Angry Birds Reloaded initially released, I quite liked it. Since the original game had been taken off the App Store, this was the only way to play those levels again. But now that we have the original again, this is useless to me. It does have updated graphics, and it kind of shuffles the levels of the original games into a new order. It has new pig characters too, but they're just reskins of the birds. There's certainly nothing wrong with it, it's just kind of pointless now. I don't want to play it because the original is just better. B tier. Angry Birds Journey used to be called Angry Birds Casual. It's a slingshot game that is meant for little kids and to just have fun with super basic levels. It's fine. For most people it's boring, but I think it works for what it is. Even though the style is much more bright and kid-focused than it already was, I don't personally care about it either. C tier. Finally, Rovio Classics. Angry Birds is just the original game again. Finally, Rovio Classics, Angry Birds. It's just the original game again. It so far doesn't have all the... dang it. Finally, Rovio Classics, Angry Birds is just the original game again. It so far doesn't have all the levels, but I would imagine they'll all be added in the future. I've had some annoying bugs too, but the levels don't exactly play like they used to. It's the same as the original game, just needs to be updated a little bit. I'm not going to rank it separately because of this, it's just S tier with the original. Well, let's try to answer the question from the start of this video. What is the rest of the Angry Birds series like, and are they as good as the original? Well, the simple answer is no, just based on my tier list. There are some really fun experiences, and for those who just like the IP, there are a ton of things to play. As for modern re-releases, I'd obviously love to see Rio, but Space and Seasons too. I don't know if there's any chance for Star Wars to get a modern release, but that would be really cool too. If you're like me, you have a lot of nostalgia for these earlier games. So it really hurt when Rovio strayed away from that. My biggest hope is for them to just keep trying new things while giving us the things we already love at the same time. While this is just a kid's game, it has a lot of fans who grew up playing it too. Anyways, let me know if you liked this video. I'm sure it ended up being pretty long, but it's a cool look at the history of the series. And if you disagree with my rankings, yell at me in the comments, or even make your own video, that would be cool. I was thinking of ranking the Disney games I play, and maybe the Plants vs. Zombies series too. Let me know if you want to see either of those videos. Finally, thank you so much for watching. Please like the video if you do like it, and subscribe to see more casual videos and much more edited ones like this. Anyways, I will see you soon. Goodbye. While some Angry Birds games have a... While some Angry Birds games have some really good levels or worlds that aren't as great, the original has great mix... While some Angry Birds games have some really good levels or worlds that... I'm also gonna include I'm also going to include Bad Piggies, Angry Birds Stella, and Angry Birds Journey. I'm also going to include oh my gosh.